Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with an update to Psychics. Now, first and foremost, I do want to say this isn't exactly banished Psychics that I've come to really build my channel around in the early years. It has a lot of those inspirations, but there is a very important set of OCG exclusive cards for the time being that we don't really have an announcement for as to when we're getting them. Those monsters like the level 6 Synchro are just really awesome. They fit perfectly into kind of the Earth banished Psychic theme that I've come to love over the years, and since we don't have them yet, we're not playing fully into that theme. Instead, I wanted to look at kind of revisiting this deck with the lens of Master Rule 5 and looking at all the cool new cards that we got, things like 𝕮𝗏𝖊𝖑𝖊𝖓 and revisiting cards like Psy-Framelord Lambda, and putting old, kind of lesser known tech like Telekinetic Powerwell into full force with support like Psi-Reflector, which is something that I always wanted to look at but never really had an opportunity to do so until now. I feel like a link and synchro based hybrid strategy kind of like this is something that's really timely given what's going on with the format, and I think it'd be kind of a fun kind of spin on Psychics, a little bit of the old stuff but a lot of new stuff as well, and I'm really happy with how this deck turned out. So as always, this is going to be a let's build. I'll go through and explain all my choices and build the deck from the ground up for you guys so you can see my thought process, and hopefully that gives you some insight on how the deck is played as well as what you may do if you wanted to customize the deck for yourselves. If you just want to see the completed list, you can go ahead and click the timestamps in the description box down below. I always include that table of contents for your convenience, and that last one, the A to Z, is probably what you're more used to on profiles for other channels. But without further ado, let's build Psychics. The first step in building any deck is to establish the theme and to build a core that supports the theme's goals. And honestly, today it's going to be in two parts for this core because we have the kind of classic banished Psychic core that you guys are probably used to if you've been on the channel before. I'll talk about that briefly after this section, but I did want to touch upon some newer cards that, while not necessarily always the priority in this deck, are just as important as some of that old stuff. You'll be able to see how they kind of mesh together, and I think it'll be a little more entertaining if you see the new stuff first. So we're starting off with 3 copies of our starter card from Dark Neostorm, Psi-Reflector, only a rare somehow, but this is a level 1 Dark Psychic Tuner monster with 400, 300 for its stat spread, and it reads as follows. If this card is normal or special summoned from anywhere, you can add 1 Assault Mode Activate or 1 card that specifically lists that card in its text from your deck to your hand, except another copy of Psi-Reflector. Then, as a separate ignition effect, you can reveal Assault Mode Activate in your hand to target 1 monster in your graveyard that specifically lists that card, except another copy of Psi-Reflector, and special summon it. If you do, you increase its level by 1 to 4, so you can't not increase its level. It is a mandatory effect, but lots of flexibility in that level modulation, and you can only use each effect of Psi-Reflector once per turn. What this card does is if you normal this, special this, do whatever with it, and bring it out, you're able to go and search for a copy of Assault Beast, which reads, you can discard this card from your hand to the graveyard in order to add 1 Assault Mode Activate from your deck to your hand. It's honestly a pretty decent monster, level 4, Earth, Beast Warrior, 1900 attack. You could honestly, before 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖓 was banned, make like 𝕮𝖃𝖊𝖊𝖓𝖓 Beast plays off of it and stuff like that if you happen to draw it, but realistically in this deck, you just play the 1 copy, because if you happen to have it still floating around in your deck, you're able to go and discard it in order to search your copy of Assault Mode Activate, which you will never activate in this particular deck, because if you hold on to Assault Mode Activate, you're able to reveal it to your opponent, use Psi-Reflector's ability, special summon the Assault Beast you just searched and discarded, and now this thing is going to be a level 5 monster, which lets you make a level 6 Synchro, all the way up to a level 8 monster, which lets you make a level 9 Synchro, and that's really powerful because you also have access to a tuner and a non-tuner, so not only could you go for something like a generic level 8 like Psy-Framelord Omega that fits so well into the strategy, but you could even go for new cards like 𝕮𝗏𝖊𝖑𝖊𝖓 that just needs a tuner and any other monster, whether or not it's a tuner, so lots of flexibility off of just this starting point here. And like I mentioned, you don't play Assault Mode Activate in this deck in particular because if next turn you're able to summon Psi-Reflector again or keep it on the board or whatever, you can actually reveal that same Assault Mode Activate and keep reaping the benefits of that free Assault Beast revival. So in this engine, you effectively have 3 starters to begin, the Psi-Reflectors. The Assault Beast, if you have it in your deck, great, you search it as a free plus off a Reflector. If you don't have it in your deck, it doesn't matter. You can still normal Reflector, discard the Assault Beast you already already have in hand, search Assault Mode Activate, and still reveal that activate. So sure, you don't get a free search, but you're not dead in the combo. The only dead card here is the Assault Mode Activate, and honestly, it's the same case as the 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘, the Brilliant Fusion with Garnet. You don't need to play more than the one Assault Mode Activate, especially the way the rest of the deck follows from here. But very powerful core, as you can see, and it all fits nicely into Emergency Teleport, which is a quick play spell that lets you summon a low-level Psychic to your field. Yeah, it gets banished, but you're probably using it for a play anyway that turn. 1-for-1 is now viable again in the deck, even without Glow-Up Bulb, because you can just discard a card from your hand in order to special summon Psi-Reflector from your deck, which gets it kicked off without even a normal summon. And I do want to include now 3 copies of the powerhouse Telekinetic Powerwell. This thing saw very minimal success one time, and I think like a European event once with like 𝕮𝖃𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘, like way back in the day. But essentially, it is a low-level soul charge emergency teleport hybrid that lets you special summon as many of your level 2 or lower psychic type monsters from your graveyard as you would like, and then you take damage equal to the total number of those monsters levels times 300. So let's say you summon one Psi-Reflector back, you take 300 burn. Oh, but Psi-Reflector's effect still triggers, and you can use this in order to keep using Psi-Reflector turn after turn. Even if this ends up just being Psi-Reflector comes back, can't use its effect, it's a free body. It's just like Emergency Teleport in that sense. Sure, it doesn't search out the card, but there are plenty of ways to do so, including, again, cards like 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖙𝖓𝖓𝖓 that can fetch a tuner. So a lot of times, you'll end up with a combo that doesn't necessarily have Reflector in your hand, but you have Powerwell. You go off, make a 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖓, that will summon your Psi-Reflector for free, go and make a Link play off of that, and then you can play Powerwell to bring it back, and now that's a free Assault Beast combo for either a Synchro play, 2 more Link materials, whatever you may need to do. So very powerful core, very flexible, and now all of a sudden with the 1-for-1 and the Emergency Teleport, you now have 5 ways to start this combo off. Very good start, and now we'll see how that meshes with the rest of our Psychic core. Next up, we're going to talk about the #1 reason to play Psychics in the first place, and that's this guy right here. Overdrive Teleporter is kind of an interesting card. It's got all these balancing factors that make it look like a really bad card, and that's honestly why this deck probably won't do really well in competition anytime soon, but it's definitely a powerful, fun card when it does go off. So it's a level 6 light Psychic with 2100 attack, 1200 defense, and you can't special summon it, so you basically have to tribute summon this guy, which already kind of restricts it for competitive play. But you could pay 1 time while it's face up on the field 2,000 of your life points to special summon exactly 2 level 3 Psychic monsters from your deck, effectively being a double Emergency Teleport. Now, the fact that it's exactly level 3 means you can't go and summon out like your Psi-Reflector off of this, but you're able to go for a lot of really powerful cards in this strategy. First off, I like playing 2 copies of Hush Psychic Cleric. Used to play 3 when I played the Overdrive Teleporter, but if you're not really trying to draw the Cleric, you're probably just going to go off when you search your Clerics, and really the whole purpose of 2 Cleric is you can turn all the extra dead cards in your hand, like the Assault Mode Activate you may not need next turn, if you can just win the game, into free fodder in using this card's effect. This thing has got 0 attack, 21 defense. It force switches to defense position if you normal or flip summon it, which is unfortunately Ghost Ogre food of all things, ironically as it's Psychic, but you're able to discard a card from your hand in order to target one of your Psychics in your grave, banish it, and then when this card happens to be sent to the graveyard, select one of the banished monsters that you had from this effect and special summon it. So since it's not a when you can, it's a when you do mandatory effect, you don't miss timing with this, and you're able to go ahead and link, synchro, tribute, whatever play you would like with the Psychic Cleric, and then it gets you a free monster, and you can see how having 2 of these guys means you summon the other guy back, now the other guy's in the grave, you discard a card, banish that guy, so you can keep looping the Clerics if you absolutely have to. Doesn't happen all the time, but it's something worth playing because you get a lot more summoning power. Just spam the board with materials if you don't have really powerful cards in your hand that you want to put to good use at the moment. I also like playing some extenders here, so we're playing 2 copies each of Psychic Wielder, which is a level 3 tuner monster, and Psychic Tracker, which is a non-tuner monster. Now, these cards work whether or not you're playing the Overdrive Teleporter. Wielder and Tracker both special summon themselves if you control a level 3 monster. Doesn't matter if it's Psychic or not, just can't be another copy of itself as your only monster. Hard hard once per turn on that summon, and they do go in defense position, plus they have kind of a lackluster defensive stats, 0 and 600. But if they're sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, you either give a continuous boost to that monster of 600 points, which is really powerful when you're able to bring out something like a Stardust Charge Warrior, who is now able to draw you a card and attack everything with its 2600 attack. Or you can use Wielder, or you could use both, and Wielder says if you synchro summon with a monster, target one of your opponent's monsters with less attack than the synchro monster you summon and destroy that card. And again, since these two effects can stack together, you basically have the continuous effect apply, boosting your monster's attack by 600, and now that is the new threshold that Wielder is able to destroy under. So very powerful cards. You're able to use them as extenders when you play a level 3 monster to start going off, so they're nice little combo pieces there. But by playing 2 of each, you also have a lot of flexibility in bringing either or both of those out with your Overdrive Teleporter, and then you could start making combos depending on the situation that you find yourself in. That's one of the fun things with this deck. Again, not the most competitive because there are some crutches that it has, like having to normal summon, having to go through effect negation with the Overdrive Teleporter. But when you are able to manage that, the ceiling of this deck is quite high, and really it's for those games you play it. It's because of those fun, explosive boards you're able to make, dismantle your opponent's plays, set up your own boards. It's honestly surprising that Psychics are able to still do this in 2020, and these cards kind of lead towards that as well. One other card I want to mention that you could probably summon off of Overdrive Teleporter, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This, of course, needs no explanation for the most part, except don't forget it's a psychic monster. It's summonable as a level 3, and her effect activates on the field, unlike the other hand traps being restricted to just the hand. So if you summon this off of Overdrive Teleporter, your opponent may know it exists, but they still have to deal with this guy. And if you happen to tether this off of a cleric, for example, you can make a synchro play or whatever, and then bring her back and leave her on the field as just one more negation type of effect that your opponent has to fight through. So extra disruption, yeah, hard once per turn, but the synergies with the psychic theme make it very powerful in the strategy because you can keep reusing her and tutor her at will as a tuner. And heck, you can even normal summon her and special summon one of the tracker or wielder to make plays that way as well. So that's why we play those level 3 monsters there. One card that kind of fits with this theme altogether is a copy of Esper Girl. This card's a level 2, and that's why I just play the 1 copy of it. You don't really have a ton of synergy other than like Powerwell bringing this card back. The main reason you play this is because in instances where you already have access to Psi-Reflector, or you don't necessarily need it right then and there, you're able to go ahead and search this card off of 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓, which then becomes perfect food for that cleric to keep recycling. And she says if she's banished and then special summoned back, so cleric is a good example of that, banish the top card of your deck face down. Of course, you can look at that, your opponent can't. And if this card happens to hit the graveyard for any reason later, you add that banished card back to your hand, effectively getting a free draw because you're probably going to use this free tuner monster for further link or synchro plays. So 1 copy I think is honestly fine. Needle Fiber or 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓 really does open up a lot of accessibility to these guys, and I think that's really cool. Again, level 2 monster means it's just another free guy you could summon off of the Powerwell for a bigger Soul Charge-esque play, and you still have the classic combo where if you're able to bring this card off of like Teleport or something, you can then normal summon a tribute, rather, for Overdrive Teleporter, summon out a cleric and then 1 more monster next to it, and then if you cleric Esper Girl, make a synchro play, start as Charge Warrior, draw a card, and now Esper Girl comes back, and then you have another free card. These 2 is automatically a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, just a classic Banish Psychic style play that's still fully functional in this version of the deck as well. So glad to at least have that. Yeah, we cut a lot of the cards for modern play. It's still really cool that that all works. And so you may be asking at this point, well, JD, this normal summon core seems pretty heavy, and you have to fight through Effect Veiler and all that stuff also, so how are you supposed to manage all that? Well, obviously Brilliant Fusion's gone. That was kind of my bread and butter combo for getting this deck going, but there are a few options that we have still. So I like right now playing 3 copies of Brain Research Lab. This thing's kind of interesting. It makes it so you don't have to pay life points for activating Psychic Monsters effects. Instead, you put a counter on this card, so when you play Overdrive Teleporter's effect, you don't pay anything, even if your opponent Veilers you. If this happens to leave the field after it spawns any tokens, you do take 1,000 damage per counter. I said tokens, but counters. And on top of that, once per turn, you can get a bonus Psychic type normal summon in addition to your normal summoner set. And if successful, you place a Psychic counter on this card. Basically, you're putting 1,000 life points points on credit in order to normal summon another psychic monster, which suddenly means you can normal summon 𝗼𝖄𝐻𝑃, tribute her off with a counter placed on Research Lab in order to summon your Overdrive Teleporter, and then go off from there, and then actually just put another counter instead of paying 2,000 life. Brain Research Lab is a very good card for its power level in unlocking Overdrive Teleporter. Sure, you play this card and it's a -1. That's honestly why I always played Brilliant Fusion over this. For a long time, I just never even wanted to look at this card. You break Mind Master with this, but honestly, it was kind of it. But now times have changed. We need some way of getting things to go off, and that's why we have Brain Research Lab and the one terraforming just for maximum consistency. It's kind of like a, I want to do everything I can in order to get this going, especially, of course, because in this deck, when you're able to access your Cleric, you're able to discard any card from your hand anyway, so spare Brain Research Lab, terraforming, whatever. You basically deck thin off of this one card if you happen to hit it, discard any spare Brain Research Labs. And I do want to talk about Symphonic Warrior 𝗮𝖇𝖑, because, 4 copies wasn't enough for me. I wanted to make it 7, so 𝗮𝖇𝖑 is a card that I've always wanted to play. Never really found a home, but I think Psychics may be a pretty good place for it. It's a level 3 Wind Machine Pendulum, 1500 attack, 100 defense. It has this monster effect that I don't really care about. You can activate this card. It says you could discard this card when it's a scale in order to special summon one Symphonic Warrior monster from your deck except 𝗮𝖇𝖑. You can only use this effect of 𝗮𝖑 once per turn. What that lets you do is special summon a copy of Symphonic Warrior Mike's from your deck, which is a level 5 machine monster, 2300 attack, which is pretty beefy. It's like Seraph Knight. You don't care about the scale. After you normal or special summon this card is what you care about. Through any means, including the 𝗮𝖑, you can normal summon one additional monster during the main phase this turn. You can only gain that effect once per turn, so much like with Brilliant Fusion, you can't stack that Seraph Knight summon with a Brain Research Lab or a Mike, so it's either Mike's or Brain Research Lab. But wouldn't you know, if you happen to draw duplicates here, you use the 𝗮𝖑's effect and discard the Brain Research Lab in order to turn that into a free plus. Or if you need to yard a psychic monster in the graveyard in order to initiate Hush Psychic Cleric's effect, you're able to discard any psychic monster to your graveyard just so you have a target, and then from there, the discard off of this or the discard off of Cleric can then put a different monster you would like to actually summon there. Effectively, the way Yu-Gi-Oh works, of course, is if you have something in your graveyard you need to target, you need an eligible target first, but if somewhere in there, cost or otherwise, you end up placing a new target, you're able to do that as long as you were legally allowed to activate the effect in the first place. So lots of discard outlets here between these cards and the Clerics and such. Spares end up being resources, because if you draw 𝗼𝖄𝐻𝑃, you draw spare Psi-Reflectors, go ahead and dump them to the graveyard. That just makes Powerwell even more powerful. And then the fact that these cards give you 2 normal summons in the turn means you can afford to summon an Overdrive Teleporter and play Psi-Reflector in the same turn. And that's really the glue that puts those first and second cores together. Now that we've finished talking about the massive cores that power this deck, I want to talk about the tech cards in the main and extra. First and foremost, I have to talk about this. Yes, we are maximizing on Called by the Grave, because as you can see, a lot of our cards special summon from the deck or hand or otherwise, and if you get hit by Ash Blossom, Effect Failure, any of those, you kind of die. Unfortunately, if your opponent is playing something like Infinite Impermanence, not so much of a way you could stop it, and again, that's kind of one of the limitations of this deck. You have to realize not every deck is 100% competitive, and really you're playing this for fun, and honestly, I'm still surprised at what this deck is able to do. Play the Called by the Grave. It lets you stop your opponent's hand traps, and if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap in a specific matchup, you just go and banish one of their other combo pieces and shut off their plays that way. So kind of one of the decks you have to play 3 Called by the Grave in, and if you don't, you may be in trouble. Also kind of to help, especially if you're going off of like a 1-for-1 or emergency teleport to start, I am playing 3 copies of Psy-Frame 𝗮𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙. Now, this is a card originally I was like, really on the fence with, because yes, it's a psychic monster, but I kind of didn't like the fact that if you normal summon a monster, you can't really use it anymore because you have a monster on the field and you can't stop your opponent's Ash Blossom or whatever. However, there's a lot of reasons why we will play it. First of all, you realize it's a level 2 psychic tuner monster, which means if you have spares of this or you resolve it and then this card's used as material or gets killed, like maybe you summon in an attack position, your opponent gets baited into killing it because they don't know what they're playing against, you could Telekinetic Powerwell this guy back, so that's another free monster there. You of course play the 1 copy of Driver, which if you do during your turn with the spells you activate, you could go and make a free synchro monster, kind of like a Psy-Framelord 𝗮𝖄𝐻 or whatever. If your opponent's going first or you otherwise have no board, honestly it's totally fine. But of course, this ends up being a lot more viable because of Psy-Framelord 𝗮𝖊𝖑, which is a psychic link monster, totally generic, needs 2 monsters except tokens. Oftentimes you're going to kind of crown your combos with this card, leave it with like an IP Masquerena or something to potentially build into something bigger. But this card lets you activate Psy-Frame Gear Gamma from your hand, even if you control monsters. And because this card is a psychic monster, you can actually bring this Link 2 back from your graveyard with Cleric, which gives you a free plus, if you will, in giving you a Link 2 to climb with. So not necessarily going to go off and, summon this like 3 or 4 times in a turn in most situations, but even if you bring it back once or twice, that's a lot of free Link material you're able to generate with this deck. So it is nice that we finally have a psychic Link monster that we're able to take advantage of. On top of that, if you happen to summon an Omega off of your Psi-Reflector or something else, you're able to use Lambda's effect during the end phase. If you banished a psychic like Omega from your field, just search another copy of Gamma, and even if your opponent knows, having to fight through something as powerful as Gamma is such a pain to deal with, and so it ends up being a pretty powerful wall that you're able to kind of leverage in a unique way with Psychics, because she can come back if you have to do that. You can go ahead and just search your Gamma off of your Omega. Lots of flexibility. That's why I end up liking this engine. There's just a lot of little interactions. It's like Gamma's good. It interacts with Lambda, who interacts with a lot of your cards. Powerwell, the piece is back. Really, really cool stuff there. We already talked about Needle Fiber at length. �11𝖊𝖓𝖏𝑥 is key for bringing out your Psi-Reflector or Esper Girl, but I also want to mention very briefly how powerful this card is for its other ability. During your opponent's main or battle phase, you can banish this card as a quick effect in order to special summon a Synchro Tuner from your extra deck. Now, for a while, I was playing Coral Dragon, which is a nice form of removal, and when you stack that card with Psychic Wielder and or Tracker, it's scary. Like a 3000 Coral Dragon that pops a free monster on summon because of Wielder, and then can pop another card for free with a discard that sets up your plays, is pretty scary. I mean, that's a lot of momentum in your favor. I ultimately cut that card for space reasons and went with a copy of Formula Synchron. It actually ties very nicely into what we just talked about. So Formula Synchron is treated as Synchro Summon when you summon it off of Needle Fiber, which lets you go and draw one card. But then don't forget, this is the classic Excel Synchron-like tuner, so it basically lets you go and make a Synchro play during your opponent's turn. Oh, wouldn't you know, if you happen to have Lambda up, you're able to go and summon Gamma and your Driver, and now all of a sudden, Driver won't get banished by its effect during the end phase if you were to Formula Synchron and Driver Synchro play into an Omega or something. If you were to use Omega's effect and banish, then you can go ahead and search Gamma anyway. So I really love the interaction that �11𝖊𝖓𝑥 creates between Formula Synchron and Psy-Frame Driver. It's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to keep this package in here, even though it's kind of clunky if you happen to have monsters. Yes, there are certain points in your combo, if you're not careful with how you set things up, you might be out of Gamma and you may not be able to stop your opponent's plays. But to finish out the main deck, really just 2 copies of Ash Blossom. You could honestly play other hand traps as well. I only played 2 Ash Blossom just for space reasons here, because I wanted maximum on a lot of these other cards, and with Gammas and Ghost Ogres in here, thought Ash Blossom's a nice supplement here. 1 Monster Reborn as well for our last card, effectively being an extender. It's kind of like Called by the Grave in a lot of ways. That's the main deck there, and now we'll talk briefly about the extra deck and finish that off. So very quick for synchros. Naturia Beast stops your opponent's spells. It's fatal if your opponent's playing a spell-heavy deck. Beast is really easy to summon because you're able to tutor out the Esper Girl nowadays. Naturia Beast is very easy to put on the board. Extend everything else because Master Rule 5 means you can just summon this in any of your main monster zones. Cyber's Quantum Dragon. Now this card is something I may have to read because a lot of you guys may not even know it exists. Level 7 Dark Cyber Synchro with 25 and 2000. So kind of like a Stardust Dragon, except it's level 7. It's from Savage Strike, so hopefully it'll get a reprint in the Mega Tins this year, but generic level 7 synchro. While you control a Link monster, your opponent's monsters cannot attack any other monster except this, and cannot target any of your other monsters with card effects except this one. So it becomes a lightning rod for everything, which is really cool. For example, if you keep these 2 together, your opponent's forced to deal with this first. Once per turn at the start of the damage step of either player's turn, if it fights an opponent's monster, you could just bounce that monster back to the hand, kind of like �11𝖊𝖓𝖏𝑥 𝗉𝗔, except this card stays on the field, and if you were the one attacking with it, this card can attack 1 more time in a row. Won't bounce the second monster, but now you can go ahead and clear a very powerful monster like Mech Knight 𝗮𝖊𝖓𝖏𝑥, which my brother loves building decks around this. So this has been the bane of my existence. That's kind of why I thought about playing this. Fully accessible thanks to Psi-Reflector's very versatile level modulation, but you bounce an opponent's powerful, problematic monster, and you can kill 1 more card. This thing just snowballs advantage like no other, and that's why I love playing the Quantum Dragon, because when you make the same Psi-Reflector play, you can access any of these non-specific synchro monsters, and so cards like Cyber's Quantum Dragon are just as good as Omega and all those. So definitely strongly encourage you to look into that card. Last synchro monster here is Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. This is a level 8 generic with 3000 attack, 0 defense, and it says when your opponent activates a monster effect anywhere, anytime, except during the damage step, quick effect, you can just banish that monster. no negation going on, but getting rid of your opponent's monster is a big threat, or at least a deterrent, so that they don't want to lose their best cards to this free effect. And then, if this happens to attack and destroy an effect monster by battle and send it to the graveyard, you can have it gain attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack permanently, and then it can attack one more monster that same turn. So this is effectively an easier to summon 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 dragon in this deck. Ultimately, in testing, I found I go for 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 dragon once in a blue moon. Other decks, I go for it a lot more. This deck, though, I wanted just like, how can I put the Psi-Reflector to use on top of everything else I'm doing? 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 is basically that 2-card, or with Psi-Reflector, 1-card 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑 type of a card that lets you end games. That's the reason you play it. That extra bonus removal ability is quite nice in being able to stop your opponent's bigger pushes as well, again, as that deterrent. So I do like it going first or second. It's just such a flexible card. Ultimately decided to use it over 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑 dragon and other alternatives like �11 of the Diabolic Dragons as well, which I found was good but a little passive. So lots of other synchros you can play. Again, you can play any generic synchro monster between the levels of 6 and 9 using Psi-Reflector, and that's not considering any of the other cards you could throw into the equation as well, with it being a level 1 tuner monster. So play with it to your heart's content, but these are the monsters I found to be most versatile and useful to me. Finally, for the Link monsters, 𝕊𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖓, this thing just sweeps up all of your free non-Link monsters in order to turn into this. Has the formula Synchron-like effect, of course, and really you use this because you're able to make like 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖓 near invincible, unless your opponent loads it or does some weird non-targeting removal that doesn't destroy. So very powerful option for the strategy. Again, a lot of times you're going to keep 𝕊𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓 with whatever else on your board, whether it's Needle Fiber or Lambda or both, and then that lets you go into 𝕊𝖓𝖓𝖓, who just needs 2 monsters special summon from the extra deck. Speaking of which, 𝕿𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖓 is a Link 4, very easy to summon, 3000 attack, has a Lightning Rod effect for attacks, so your opponent can't attack anything else, so just keep like an 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖄𝑇𝖑 Beast or a Lambda or something else next to this guy, and all of a sudden they have to deal with this guy first, which is a huge problem. You can't target this guy, or your opponent can't, if it was special summon from the extra deck as a Link summon, so that's a problem there. And anytime it battles a special summon monster, either way, you get an honest-like effect, just boost your attack by your opponent's attack, always do 3000 effectively, and then if you happen to actually die and it goes to the graveyard because of your opponent's card while you control it, non-targeting, just shuffle a card back into the deck, which is really annoying as well. So really powerful card. Is it invincible? No, but oftentimes your opponent's going to bleed so many cards to this that they're going to lose to the inevitability of that pressure. 𝕊𝖓𝖓𝖓 is still very powerful, so definitely consider playing him because he's so easy to make off of just your Link 2s, and especially off of IP, who then protects it from destruction by card effects as well. Because of IP, I like playing Nightmare Unicorn. You don't usually go for Link 3s, but sometimes that's the best play you can leave, especially with IP, because now you have an indestructible 22 that can just, during your opponent's turn, bounce one of their cards back into their deck, and that's really powerful. Apollousa, this thing is just very easy to summon. You usually summon off of 3 materials, but sometimes you could go 4 off of this. What can I say about this? It's Light and Darkness Dragon for this format. It's very accessible. You go for it sometimes. If you summon it next to an 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖄𝑇𝑑 Beast, that ends games a lot because you're able to stop all spells and most monster effects, so really powerful there. And then I do like playing the one 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑, despite having cut 𝕿𝖆𝐼𝑠word, just because 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝑑 Dragon, it's just so unique. Part of my decision to play it was skewed by my brother playing 𝕿𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖓 all the time, but I think it's just a very powerful out. A lot of times the only out to 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝑑 is 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝑑, or very similar types of cards, and if you IP this card, now it can't die by card effects, and it can't even be targeted by card effects, so it becomes even harder to kill. Finally here, 1 copy of Nightmare Griffin. This thing's really in here just because it's an easy Link 4 you could summon with any 2 or more monsters, so much like 𝕊𝖓𝖓𝖓, it becomes a decent card you could play off of the 𝕊𝖇𝖑𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖓 if you happen to have a zone available. Like, let's say you have a Lambda in your extra monster zone, and then below it you have Masquerena and enough monsters to summon a Griffin. You're able to go and summon your Griffin into your main monster zone, and if your opponent's not playing a dedicated Link strategy, they may be locked out of all their special summon effects thanks to Griffin. And then on top of that, you could discard a card on summon, go ahead and reset a card, so you could set Telekinetic Powerwell during your opponent's turn when you summon this off of IP Masquerena, and then follow that up with a Telekinetic Powerwell during your turn to go ahead and just combo off again. So because of the interactions with this deck and its quick play spells, I think Griffin ends up being a very interesting card holistically. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks! Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this deck as much as I did putting it together for you guys. We'll start off with a run through of the main deck. 40 cards here. We have double Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Assault Beast, 1 Esper Girl, double Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, double Hush Psychic Cleric, triple Overdrive Teleporter, triple Psi-Reflector, triple Psy-frame gear gamma and the 1 driver, double psychic tracker, double psychic wielder, triple Symphonic Warrior guitar with 2 A's if you're searching that, and Symphonic Warrior mics with 2 C's if you're searching that. Then for spells, we have triple Brain Research Lab, triple Called by the Grave, 1 Emergency Teleport, a Monster Reborn, and a 1-for-1, triple Telekinetic Powerwell, 1 Terraforming, and the Lone Assault Mode Activate, again for a 40-card main deck. Then for our extra decks, starting with the Synchros, we have Formula Synchron for our Needle Fiber play, we have our Naturia Beast, Stardust Charge Warrior, Cyber's Quantum Dragon, and those are levels 2, 5, 6, and 7 there. For level 8s, we have Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Draco Berserker of the 𝗍𝖑𝖊𝖓, and Psy-Framelord Omega. And then for our Link monsters, Link 2, we have Crystron �11𝖊𝖓𝖓𝖏, we have IP Masquerena, and Psy-Framelord Lambda. Then for Link 3, we have Nightmare Unicorn. For Link 4s, we have 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓𝖙, Bow of the Goddess, Borolo Dragon, Nightmare Griffin, and finally Mech Knight Crusadia Avramex for, of course, a 15-card extra deck. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.